But just an intro to Actilife. So again, here's where I'm going to start toggling, so I hope I don't make it even too nauseous going back and forth. But when you installed Actilife, I think it should have prompted you to give you an option for how do you want to view your units. So depending on, are you a kilogram person or are you a pounds person? I find that it's helpful to establish these units when you're first getting oriented to Actilife, but after that they become really tedious. And your statistician definitely does not want to see those in your final file, because any type of text variable in with your number variable completely messes up things. So, but I would encourage you to set this now just so we're all on the same page, and again help you to view things a little bit more easily. So if you open Actilife and you go to Tools and Options, you'll see it has this time span display and units of measurement. And so I've just clicked here the show text for day, hour, minute, and or second to get that started. And we'll remove that as we go along, but that again just gets you on the same page so that you don't have to have a kind of holy grail to understand what the different units mean. Okay, so Actilife, what do we get? So again, I'm not going to go into the whole download and all of that. Everyone can have access to that information, but when you hook that accelerometer up to your computer and you download the data, you get two files. You get a GT3X file, which is usually, well it's the huge file that has all of the raw data. It's still compressed, but it's still raw data. And you can't open that Actigraph GT3X unless you have the Actilife software. So those run anywhere from 60 to 100 megabytes, depending on how long your sampling time is. So they're large, but they're a really great resource, really rich. And so that's one file you get here, just the raw data using the sampling frequency that we do here. So the default for Actigraph is to sample at a 30 hertz metric. And then what usually happens then after, for again those of us who are not using the raw files, is we put it through this what's called a bandpass filter, which really then says, okay, I want to take off the tails of movement. So if something is so minutia and barely on the blip, I don't want that to be included in my data file. Also, if it's someone riding on a lawnmower, I don't want that acceleration to also be captured in my file and counted as human movement. So it has these kind of this bandwidth filter, which we can adjust on the user end. And then it sums all of those up, and then we get this AGD file, which is the epoch level data. And that's the file that we work with almost exclusively in Actilife from the user standpoint. So it's the native file. It's created automatically when you download the data from your device. And you'll see it's about 1/10. Gosh, I don't know the conversion between kilobytes and megabytes, but it's much smaller. I know I can email these relatively efficiently. The GT3X, not so much. So both provide valuable information, but again, the .agd is what you need for analysis.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So the raw, so 30 hertz, it's actually sampling. So there's an entry every 30 milliseconds.
Right, I was gonna say it's, yes. And that's,
okay.
Yeah.
And then
and you could scale that up if you want.
Right,
but
and
that's
the passing to the Actilife software is when you say, that's when you say I want, give me every
10 seconds.
one every 10 or 60 seconds or, okay.
Right.
That's
right.
why it's small. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. All right, so when, again, you're plugging in the device and you're going to download, you have a variety of options that, again, really warrant consideration ahead of time, because some of these you can't go back and choose later, and also once you download the device, the data is still on there, but once you initialize it to send it back out, then it's gone. And some of these we can't reprogram after the fact. So if you can see the screen up here, you can change the location for where you want to store the data, how you want to name it. Again, this right here is the create that AGD file, which again is what you absolutely need for the data scoring, so you want to make sure that that's always clicked. The default is that it is clicked, so unless you go in there and change it. And then here is where we have that option that Kevin was just talking about, the epochs, what we want that to be. So again, if we're really interested, again, I would say only in validation type studies, you're developing regression equations, you're getting into the science of it. Otherwise, we always put that to 60 seconds. The number of axes, again, we want to take advantage of all the data that we have available. You can always decide to focus on one axis later, but you don't want to lose that information at the front. So we always use number of axes as 3. And then you have an option to identify what other types of variables you'd be interested in. And I should say, that's right, for terminology, that the sum of all 3 axes, Actilife always refers to it as vector magnitude, so that will come up a little bit later when we talk about analysis or scoring. So you have a couple of these optional criteria here. So steps, again, most of us, all of us are interested in steps. Even if it's not the primary question, it's always good data to have. It's easily interpretable. But we also have these optional parameters that, again, depending on where the device is located, you may or may not be able to collect and analyze. So it does have a lux option. So ambient light, this is, people are interested in kind of sleep disturbance, daytime, nighttime waking. You can have that data enhanced or enabled and available. Also the inclinometer, so trying to find out body positioning at rest. Again, that's only valid at the hip or the upper thigh. And again, it's great if you can put it on the upper thigh, but Actigraph doesn't provide any type of wear accessories to secure it. So it's one thing to have a device that will do it, but it's another thing to actually be able to put it on the body. So there are other devices there that are being created in-house, and also looking at kind of clinical. So if you're really interested in kind of that this is not the monitor for you. So relative to kind of Julie S.'s point earlier about kind of shuffling, Actigraph does provide this option called low frequency extension, which essentially expands this curve here to the left. So instead of chopping off this kind of first, 5-10%, whatever this filter is, or the criteria is, it expands it, which is really advantageous when you're working with populations. It doesn't have to be necessarily older adults, but populations that either have a shuffling gait or have a very slow gait speed, where you don't want to have that data thrown out as artifact when actually it is real human movement. It's very sensitive. You'll find that it really changes the counts, the activity counts that you get. So I do always provide a healthy dose of caution when you apply that. They really want to make sure that it really is a clinically valid reason. The other option too is that if you have people who are regularly using some sort of stationary walking aid like a walker, we have found that accelerated movement is so slow that it's kicked out when you use just the regular filter. So low frequency extension is appropriate there.
On a wrist worn.
On a wrist worn,
Right.
yeah, right, sorry, yes. So the great option here, again, is that you can do both. So you can have a low frequency extension file and you can have it without. You can look at them, see what the difference is, and again, just have that in your back pocket as you go along. Again, you can also apply this to multiple devices and files at once. You only have to set this up once from there. Relative to our discussion about data scoring and processing, again, you always tend to impute and provide subject information, but one piece of biometric information that's almost always critically important is weight. So whether you get that at the front end or the back end, you need to have body weight to do a lot of these calculations relative to energy expenditure. So you can enter that at this stage, or we'll talk about where you can enter it on the back end. So again, if you go into your Actilife software, you'll see the file menu has a lot of different options. Templates and things are mostly for initialization and downloading, but you have this kind of import-export menu option. And this allows you basically, yes?
So I think because I have a light edition on my computer already, is that why I'm not able, it will not let me see the, is it because I
No,
have
you should
light?
be able to upgrade it though.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna keep on
If you
working.
go to...
I got it, you go, I will.
Are you sure? Go to,
Yeah.
go to help. It's activation details or deactivate, but yes,
Okay.
if you type in that new product key, you should be able to upgrade to the full.
Thank you.
No worries, let me know. So this allows you to transfer or import or export your data into various different modes. Again, most of us hopefully will not have to do this, but again, if you decide to come back to a study 5 years from now and you're interested in using the GT3X data, you can pull that in a meaningful way. If you want to export your AGD file, so all of these minute by minute epochs or hourly, into a usable format that's not Actilife specific, so an Excel sheet, this is where you come to do that. If you collected a data file that had 10-second epochs and now you want to do 60, this is where you reintegrate to change the epochs from 10 to 60. So there's a lot of options here for import, export, and convert. And I won't go into all of them here, but here's a nice little summary of what you can do and why it's valuable to have all of that. So AGD File Viewer. This allows you to, it's kind of the platform that Actilife provides for a really quick snapshot view of what your data looks like. So this is really important if you're assessing compliance as you go. So if you ask patients to wear it for 5 days, you get the monitor back, you want to know, were they compliant or do I need to ask them to wear it again? The AGD File Viewer is the easiest way to do it. And there are a couple of ways that you can get to it. You can get to it from the File menu in Actilife. You can double click on the data set once you upload it into the software, or you can just open it from the file by double clicking in the file where it's stored. So if we could do this in real time, if you would go to File and then open AGD and pick any of the Actigraph files that were in that Duke box that you want to look at. So then you should get a screen that looks like this. So it gives you all the information about what type of device you used, what your epoch length was, what the date of where, all of the modes that you selected when you downloaded it, subject name, subject characteristics. But this is where you really get the nitty-gritty detail for that bird's eye view of were they compliant. So you can view here on a daily basis, so each graph here is one day, one 24-hour day. And you can scroll through and start to look at what are the activity profiles across those days. And you'll see there's a pretty drastic drop-off from when they're wearing it to when they're not. So again, from a data processing standpoint, this is the most efficient way to see were my patients compliant, and do I have a data collection issue, a missing data issue that I need to address in real time.
So it automatically sets every 24 hours? Each of these is 24 hours? You don't have to put any special settings?
No, that's the default. That's right. Now again, if you're interested in really deep dive, you can go in by day, and it will give you whatever your epoch length here is, 1 minute. Activity counts across those three axes, the three axes aggregated, and then across all of those outcomes that you identified. So steps, ambient light, all of that.
So the vector magnitude is the activity count.
Yes, the sum of the three activity activity counts. That's right. Now the cautionary tale here is that you have an opportunity to export this data to Excel, but resist the urge to do that. This is not where you want to export this data because we haven't done any processing yet. So this will be just everything that's on there, regardless of pulling out, again, kind of those spurious movements, the days that they weren't wearing it, that should not be included in analyses. So again, really, I don't do much of anything with this right side of the screen. It's all on the left at that initial stage. Any questions about the AGD viewer? Any questions in general? Okay, so I mentioned that there was another opportunity if at the start of the study you forget or don't have it, the patient's biometric information is, you'll see next to the, down here, subject biometric, you can click edit, and you can edit these fields. So again, you get the monitor back, you don't have the data, you start to go back and do your analyses, you can enter those in on an individual basis. If you have a whole host of patients that you need to do this on, this is not the most efficient way to do it. There's another screen later on that you can just go down the whole row and enter them there. But if you're doing it on a case-by-case every once in a while, this is a great way to do it as well. All right. And then I guess the other thing I should mention is that any changes you make here, do not make any changes to the actual data file. So there's nothing you can really do. Actilife does not allow you to damage or manipulate any of the data in the file. So everything is kind of a filter, if that makes sense. It's almost like a database where it changes the way you view it, it changes the way you summarize it, but it doesn't mess with the data. So people tend to have a very kid gloves approach to Actilife and Actigraph. You can abandon that with some regard because really you need to play with it, you need to see what it looks like. And all of these are just filters, so you can activate or deactivate as you need to.